Good morning, everyone. I collect plastic spoons and plastic forks and plastic knives. I must admit, when I thought about coming to stand up and talk in front of 200 of the world's greatest innovators, I thought that might be a bit of a risk, but after this morning's inspirational speakers, I'm not feeling embarrassed about that at all. Ask me why I collect plastic cutlery. Thank you. Because these very simple, usually free little items highlight the massive difference between very good design and really, really poor design. Each item is designed for broadly the same purpose. In manufacturing terms, it contains a similar shot weight of plastic. It's made in a very similar way, usually in an injection molding machine. Each is approximately the same size, a very similar shape. If I was to ask someone to sketch a knife, fork, and spoon, they'd probably do a drawing a bit like this. Worth noting that if I frame the question in a slightly different way and said, design a device to assist easy food consumption, they'd probably come up with something slightly different. But that's where the similarities end in my collection. Finishes, matte, gloss, in-mold spark textures, different ribbing details that play a huge role in defining the structural stiffness in the different planes, the comfort in use, the functional effectiveness, the stabbing, the scooping, the cutting, the likelihood of breakage. I've run perceptual icebreaker activities where we start to map these different subtle qualities and start to tease out nuances around sustainability and premiumness and naturalness. This is the jewel in my crown. Functionally and emotionally, I find it utterly beautiful, even if it is a piece of disposable cutlery. Structurally, it is near perfect. Every plane of applied load has been thought about to carefully balance material volume and structural strength. If you want to have a look, come and see me at the coffee break. It's a strong reminder that good design is actually free, and I don't mean literally free, but it's about designing in value, with time, with empathy, with ingenuity. You can make fundamentally different user experiences without actually adding to the bill of materials. You're probably getting the idea by now. I'm a bit passionate about design and very, very focused on detail. As a designer, someone that I've taken a lot of inspiration from over the years is Dieter Rams, the creative mastermind behind establishing Braun as a household brand during the 1950s. He was originally trained as an architect, but served as chief design officer from 1961 through to 1995. His achievements are far greater than I could do justice to in the few minutes I have now, but designers all over the world have been influenced by his sense of aesthetic style. Parallels have often been drawn between the Apple design team's work and Rams's work. Have a guess when the Braun T3 pocket radio was designed? 1958. Extraordinary, extraordinary. That sort of sense of aesthetic timelessness. And although the technologies have been superseded, reel-to-reel tape recorders and cassettes and record players and so on, this visual language conveys an elegance that is both functional and beautiful, things that I bet whatever industry we work in, we can all aspire to. The consistency of Ram's success suggests that in addition to hard work, there was some sort of methodology, some sort of philosophy that he applied to maintain this consistent success. And indeed, there was. Some of you may be familiar with Ram's 10 Commandments of Good Design, a set of principles he began to form during the first 2 decades of his career and crystallized in the 1980s. Good design is innovative. Good design makes a product useful. It's aesthetic. It makes a product understandable. It's unobtrusive, it's honest, it's long-lasting. Good design is thorough down to the last detail. It's environmentally friendly, and it involves as little design as possible. Now, the last one, of course, doesn't suggest that design is a light-touch afterthought. In fact, quite the opposite. It's like the polar extremes in my collection of cutlery. It's about refinement down to a point where all superfluousness has been removed and maximum value designed in. As Mark Twain was reputed to have once said, if I'd had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. The pressure to innovate on all of us is relentless, and we have so many apparently competing priorities. But by keeping a number of principles and challenges top of mind, this can help us steer a steadier course through the innovation challenges and manage our exposure to innovation risk. This is the theme of my reflections today, which I've called 10 Design Evils, and of course the chance for FEI redemption. And so evil number one is not giving a design team the time to iterate and refine to achieve a high-quality result. For some reason, there's a nuance in the industry that often design teams are given less time than other disciplines to solve for a problem. And yet these folks are charged with connecting the technology with the user insight, the business model, creating the perfect user experience, guardianship of those historic brand equities while charting a course to the future. Anyone know what this is? A grill? Nearly. In 2019, the age of drones, autonomous vehicles, AI, this is still the standard interface for a refrigerator. Okay, I get off, but why 1 to 6? I mean, given the application, I have to assume it's some kind of thermal scale, but is 1 more cold? Is less cold? I mean, is it degrees centigrade? Because 0, it would be the freezer cabinet, and if it's above 6, that's where bacteria grows really quick. I just don't get it. You know, and these sorts of things could be avoided by getting users involved, iterating. These problems would bubble to the surfaces, and the right solutions would be found. But it's not just budget fridges that make me mad. No mark is immune from incongruent design details. This is the Ferrari 488 GTB. Launched in 2015, I can remember the first moment I set eyes on it. It was love at first sight, the most beautiful car I had ever seen. And then the record skipped. The love was to be short-lived or imperfect at best. I caught sight of the door handle and the keyhole. I tried desperately to salvage the blossoming relationship, to find a viewing angle to help me salvage that original lust. But it was no use. No amount of reading that an aerodynamist had styled it specifically to guide air into the intake explicitly could help me remove the impression that it just looked a bit stuck on. And the keyhole looked like it had maybe come from somewhere else in the budget parts department at the Fiat Chrysler parts area. And that's not an emotional perception I'm going to want to have if I'm sat in a Ferrari showroom negotiating the finer points of my 388 purchase. Which, to be fair, probably isn't a problem I'm going to be having anytime soon, so I'll try not to lose too much sleep over it. Compare and contrast handles. Enough said. Evil number 10, not giving a design team enough time to achieve a result that is both functionally intuitive and utterly beautiful. Forcing the customer to be like you. In 2002, Microsoft unveiled their tablet PC. It was another toe in the water of this embryonic category that was definitely interesting. Lots of companies were dabbling, but nobody could really work out what to do with what marketers would call the killer reason to believe. An even bigger problem, perhaps the defining problem, was the fact that it was a full-fat PC. It ran Windows XP. Almost 10 years on, a Computer World magazine article reflected on the successes and failures of the previous decade. Rather than envision what people really wanted to do with a tablet and then design the hardware for that, Microsoft instead force-fit Windows XP. XP was a great desktop operating system, but it was bloated overkill for a tablet. Add to that a $2,000 price tag. So rather than trying to create a market that never existed or try and serve a need that consumers never knew they had, they tried to make a traditional desktop just look a bit different. But Jobs, famously a technology fast follower, but critically a pioneer of crystallized market insight and user experience, stood up at a launch event in 2010 and beamed up images of an iPhone and a MacBook and confidently stated, there is a space for a category in the middle that is so much more intimate than a laptop and so much more capable than a smartphone. And of course, the glue, the magic, was in the design of an operating system that allowed users to pass the time, to use apps in whole new ways. Don't be evil number 9. Don't force the customer to be like you. This leads me neatly to evil number 8. It's all too easy to become fixated on your current product. Successful formats can create this kind of bubble in which the current offering becomes so sacred that fear of change stifles anything but the most incremental of tweaks. Today we associate the name Ducati with some of the most beautiful and desirable motorcycles in the world. I have first-hand, or should I say first wrist and neck experience of the aches and pains that you are willing to endure to own one of Bologna's finest machines. It does look like I'm being pursued by a biker gang in this photo. I'm not, but if I was, this would be the bike to escape on. But in 1926, when founder Antonio Ducati and his three sons founded Società Scientifica Radio Brevetti Ducati to produce vacuum tubes and other radio components, it was unlikely they had any idea what the future would hold. However, their entrepreneurial approach to a range of business opportunities and external factors, including, of course, World War II, would allow them to make quite significant changes that eventually would see them producing 200,000 motorcycles a year by 1950. That vision to see beyond the current product range, the current business model, allowed them to become the success story they are today. Evil 7, focusing on products in isolation. The humble fish finger and frozen pea, and an important story about innovation. Clarence Birdseye was the founder of the frozen food industry. What is less well known is that he was in fact a naturalist, not a physicist or an engineer. Yet another category-defining pioneer whose left-field perspective disrupted the status quo. The super abridged story of this gent's life is that he went to college to study biology but had to drop out due to the cost. But not to be put off, he joined the US Biological Mission, and in 1912, he went up to Canada on a survey. And while he was there, he saw the Inuits producing their own version of flash freezing using ice and environmental conditions to very quickly freeze fish without destroying it. And what he was amazed about was the fact that actually it still tasted so good when it had been thawed. And this inspired him to create fast freezing technology. It took him over 5 years to do it, but as is so often the case, the tech wasn't the biggest problem because consumers didn't know what frozen food was. The only adjacent points of reference they had was fresh food, and various forms of preserve, vinegar, sugar, alcohol, and so on. So he had to go out on this huge journey of education. And of course, creating a new category is much bigger than lab tech and pointing out the reason to believe to consumers. He had to create this entire ecosystem, the frozen food supply chain, from insulated rail wagons to shipping. Creating an entire category is an extraordinary feat, but by avoiding evil number 7, taking this big systems design approach and not focusing on the new product in isolation, they were able to establish and maintain market leadership for decades afterwards. This is my reading tip for today. There's some great insights on building categories from Christopher Lockett & Co. in their book, Play Bigger. 6, only see what you want to see and hear what you want to hear. Or not, as the case may be. I touched last year in my talk on pattern recognition and cognitive biases, and they've come up again a number of times during the event today. Biases have many evolutionary benefits, one of the primary ones being to keep us alive long enough to procreate. However, the dangers charged to those with innovation can be significant when trying to cut through the noise, and this is why it justifies its place in our top 10 innovation evil list. I got on a flight back from Luxembourg a few weeks ago and almost didn't see the little sign saying no step on the fragile little metal lip that separates the high pressure from the low pressure, and presumably if it gets bent it causes a whole catalogue of bad things to happen, the least bad of which is probably a delayed flight. I'm not being funny, but if you don't want me to step on the thing that looks like a step, don't make it look like a step. But at least I saw it. How many times do we look without seeing at all? How many times do we get into a car and walk past the fuel filler cap, or not, and yet we pull into the gas station and still often have to look or get out to check which side it's on? Be honest, how many people have got into a car that maybe wasn't theirs and had to get out to check which side the fuel cap was on, right? Feels familiar? Why do we do that? I mean, the designers have already told us. In addition to the trapdoor thing on the outside, there's an arrow right next to the fuel pump on the dashboard. And before you say, my car hasn't got it, no, really, it has. The information we need is right there in front of us, but for a whole range of reasons, we don't see it. Existing product norms, not seeing or saying what we do or think what we do, biases, the anchoring effect, that first available piece of information that we latch onto and then are unwilling to depart too far from. And it's true for categories. Reflect on Birdseye and his challenges. If your mental model of preserved food is tins, getting your head around a freezer cabinet is a significant leap to make. But the important thing was that Birdseye had filtered it back to basics. He was looking at the problem in a solution-agnostic way, a critical thing to do if you're in the disruption game, and he wasn't fixating on a better tin. He understood the consumer jobs to be done. He understood that those responsible for preparing the meal wanted to emotionally feel good about preparing a tasty meal, to functionally be able to store it for weeks or even months and yet prepare it within minutes, and socially to be seen to be giving their families quality, apparently fresh food that didn't look like the sludge from a can. Now, those of you who have attended GIF previously will know I'm a huge fan of the jobs to be done approach. In simple terms, the theory is grounded on the fact that we hire products and services to help us achieve our goals. But instead of focusing on existing solutions, which grounds us very much in today's technologies, today's experiences, a jobs lens provides this much longer term, constant unit of innovation need. And that allows us to see beyond incremental. Cast our minds back to design a new knife, fork and spoon and recast that brief as design a solution to help us more conveniently eat food. And suddenly the opportunities are limitless. However, once you've articulated your benefit, once your solution becomes accepted as a more effective way of getting the job done, you have the potential to become the new anchor. And the paradigm shift is often why we see one or a very small number of brands bubbling to the surfaces when these disruptions come along. Google, Airbnb, Uber, and so on. 5, without wishing to be rude, don't believe what people say. Anyone that's done any consumer research knows that consumers don't always say what they did. It's not conscious often. A research participant is simply unaware of a particular behaviour or routine. And these issues can be made worse in a diary study. We're not only relying on someone to record what they did, but to do so over an extended field trial of days or even weeks. And this can really misdirect our focus. These challenges weren't lost on us, so our research team sat down with our digital team and we started to brainstorm, and the result, and I'm fast tracking, is a little mini suite of sensors that we can embed in devices or in packaging to get a much longer term understanding of natural behaviours. Tailoring the sensors and the power management suite actually allows us to create a data log trial of a month or even more. We call it Dialogue, and it's been used by a whole bunch of different brands and businesses, including by Avon, and the insights are absolutely extraordinary. In one trial, 4 out of 10 users just stopped using the device within 3 weeks. In another, a healthcare project, 75% of users failed to follow each of the steps of the instruction sheet correctly. In another test, a product was subjected to over 2G of shock loading, and we're frequently surprised by the variation in the time usage that people use products for. So in the nicest possible way, don't be evil 5. Don't take what people say at face value. Evil 4, don't work in isolation. There are dangers associated with being too isolated in your innovation endeavours. Coca-Cola's Freestyle machine redefined the fountain beverage experience, offering more than 100 drinks choices in this very interactive consumer-facing format. But when creating the concept for all this choice, the technical hurdle was how to create a very small vending machine footprint. And the breakthrough came when the R&D team actually reached for technologies and expertise that sat outside of existing vending machine supply chain knowledge. And in fact, towards the medical device space, where managing highly concentrated microfluidics was actually a core competency within that space. Roald Dahl, the children's author, was in fact the co-inventor of a new kind of shunt. After his son was injured in a car crash in 1960 and diagnosed with fluid on the brain, he sought out a neurosurgeon and worked with a friend who was a hydraulic engineer to solve for that problem. History shows us that there is more to benefit from looking outside of immediate environment and competencies and relationships. There's a very strong chance that someone out there has already solved your problem, but maybe not in your application. Maybe you just don't have the time to work on it right now and someone else does. This multidisciplinary thinking, this collaborative working, it's no longer a nice to have. It could be actually critical to your future business. Don't work in isolation. Evil 3, don't be boring. Need I say more? And no heckling from the front row. Thank you very much. While on holiday at Easter, I was particularly impressed by one aspect of a little town that we went to visit. They'd had this art festival and had decided to give the artists free rein to transform all those boring little grey utilities cabinets you see all over town into bespoke works of art. I'm sure it would have been much easier to say no on some point of bureaucratic technicality when the council was approached to do this, but they didn't, and the visitor experience was 100 times better for it. And before anyone says, but we work in healthcare, we're very serious, I draw your attention to the GE Adventure Series MRI scanner. The development team have worked the whole problem through, the whole multi-sensory piece, from what it looks like to the noise of the scanner, turning the whole thing into an adventure for the kids, but let's not forget some probably very worried parents as well. The pirate and underwater adventure includes aromatherapy and bubble light effects. The cozy camp adventure allows kids to get into a specially designed sleeping bag and have the whole scanning experience under the stars. The whole thing is set up to avoid evil number 4, and as a result becomes a whole lot less intimidating and a whole lot more human. Being human brings me to evil number 2. Don't neglect the human dimension. And I'd like to introduce a client collaboration that I referenced in last year's Be More Human conference theme. And a number of delegates were so keen to hear more. I've actually asked Stephanie Monty, CEO of Ostique, to join us this year. And her story is the epitome of human dimension. Stephanie.
Thank you, Ben. Hi, good morning, everyone. So, yes, my name's Stephanie Monty. I am the founder and CEO of Ostique, and we are a health tech-based startup here in London. Both of my brothers have Crohn's disease, which, for those of you that don't know, is an incurable bowel disease, which can, in many cases, lead to needing stoma surgery. This is where a part of the bowel is removed and brought out through the stomach, diverting waste into a colostomy or ileostomy bag, which the patient then just has to wear 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So despite being quite a variety of products on the market, there are a lot of problems. There are functional problems with leakages, with odor control, and also none of these products concentrate or alleviate the mental health issues that patients face post-surgery. In fact, they really just concentrate on the collection of poo. So at Ostique, we've developed a completely innovative product which actually combines material science to improve functionality, such as adhesion, such as odor control. And we combine that with customizable and hopefully attractive aesthetics to allow people to combat the psychological problems that people face post-surgery, to promote a positive body image, and to generally improve the overall quality of people's lives. So when Ben asked me to talk about what keeping it human meant for Ostique, I thought it was perfect synergy, because we really do try and keep quite a holistic approach to innovation, to our design process. And I've sort of broken that down into 4 main parts. So the first one is working with stakeholders. Now, that seems fairly obvious, and it really is really important to understand the people for which you're designing for. In our case, that means getting people to talk about poo, you know, when, how often, the consistency, all the fun stuff. And it's actually really, really important. We spent a lot of time focusing on what volume of output was required to give the best size product and acceptable wear time. And we really spent a long time looking into this. In fact, one of our earliest focus groups, we put a pair of scales and an anonymous piece of paper and a pen, and we asked people to weigh their bags. Makes me cringe a little bit now, but that's what we did. And funnily enough, it was completely blank at the end of the day. And what we found is that volume is irrelevant. That doesn't matter how big the bag was, but what was important is how it made people feel once the bag started filling up. It was all about the weight of the product. And that really gave us insight and actually completely pivoted our design. So yes, it is about talking to people, but it's about gaining the correct insight. We do hold focus groups. We don't offer free sandwiches, though. But it is about more than understanding how people react in a clinical or in a lab environment. For us, it's very much we design for real people, for real lives. It's about understanding how someone's going to wear our product when they're out socializing with friends. It's also about understanding how they're going to feel in an intimate situation. I should clarify, it's about how they feel wearing the product, not anything else. And yeah, so it's about real experiences. Number 3 is it's about the full ecosystem, and people have talked about this earlier today about cognitive diversity, and it really is about understanding not just potentially the end user, but everyone who may affect any user behavior and how the product is used. In our case, that's clinical perspectives, so nurses, surgeons, but it's also friends and family. When I started the project, business, I was actually a university student studying industrial design. I spoke to one surgeon who absolutely told me there is absolutely no business. There are a million products out there. What are you going to do? Lucky I didn't take his advice. So finally, it is about passion, and we apply this to every single thing that we do. We truly are inspired by the people that we work with, the people that we design for. Obviously, originally, this was my brother's. As we've scaled, that has become a much wider network of people. Everything from all the stories. Earlier this year, there was this extremely tragic story. Little boy called Stephen Bridges, who unfortunately committed suicide because he was bullied so badly because of his bag. But then it's also the empowering stories that we get emails all the time. A lady who emailed us saying, "I cannot wait for your product. I cannot wait for my husband to see me and not my stoma." And it really is, it's these stories, these people that inspire us to push harder and deliver an amazing product. So thank you very much. That's what we do at Ostique. I'll be here if you have any questions later.
Keep it human. Okay, evil number 1, but before the big reveal, I need your help. We have some exciting news. We are unveiling this week a new group or vote or group polling technology, and we've given it the working title Wave. You'll be some of the first in the world to see it. The experience isn't seamless, it's in beta test, so please be a little bit gentle on me. I'm going to have to toggle a little bit on screen. The insight it responds to is the need to create a low-cost way of generating a group data set in an environment like this, while keeping it a little bit analog and avoiding that sort of friction or pain point that you often get when you ask everyone to download an app or go into a platform and log in and everyone's heads goes down. And the idea is to try and maintain a little bit more of a sort of interactive conversation, keep it a bit more human. So in your delegate bag, or maybe in your hand, you've got a CDP notebook. Please get it out and hold it. Inside the rear cover, you may see, is a pre-programmed smart tag. Anyone got one? Anyone not want one? Anyone want one? Yeah, there we go. There we go. Anyone else? Anyone else? There we go. It's all right. It's all right. Don't panic. It'll work with the ones that people have got. Okay. So, some of you may have spotted these little beacons at either side of the stage, flashing away. These guys are doing the data logging. What I'm going to do is ask some simple questions. I want you simply to hold up your books. I will offer you 2 options, A or B. If you align with one answer, I want you to waggle your books, give them a good shake. If you align with the other answer, B, I want you to hold them still as possible. Okay? Hopefully the tech is going to work. No children, no animals, but I have got some tech. So let's see how this goes. Each question will remind you of the relevant movement. All right, so when I say go, I want to do some tests. All right, so the first one is going to be I want everyone to shake their books to just help me not die here and check the tech is working. 3, 2, 1, shake. Keep going, 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 keep going. Yes! Okay, and still. Nobody move, nobody move, nobody move, nobody move. Who's moving? Stop moving. Okay, very good. Right, okay, let's get to some questions then. So, nice simple one for starters. If you have been to GIF before, when I say shake. If you haven't been to GIF before, keep it still. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Those that have been to GIF before, keep going, keep going, keep going. Not that many, not that many. still. All right, so not too many books I'm seeing. This is logging out about 50-50 at the moment. Okay, fair enough. Okay, the next one. A bit more challenging, maybe. So, your business is doing a great job of FEI. Your business could do a better job of FEI. All right, so the shakers are the guys doing the great job of FEI. 3, 2, 1, go. You're the shakers. Sorry, front-end innovation. I beg your pardon. So front-end innovation. Your business is perfectly set up for front-end innovation. It's doing a fantastic job. Could do a better job. Keep still. Could do a better job. And stop. Okay, so evening out. Maybe there's a lot of us that could do a slightly better job of FEI. Fair enough. Okay, maybe a deep dive that a little bit. So the big FEI barrier is generating high-quality ideas in the first place, or getting quality ideas through the corporate ecosystem. 3, 2, 1, shake for generating high-quality ideas. Okay, and stop. Right, so maybe getting ideas through, a bit more of a challenge, but maybe a bit more even there. Fair enough. Okay, the final one, and this is hasn't been the slickest demo, that I appreciate. I want you to be totally honest with me. And the reason why honesty is really, really important is I actually genuinely don't care what you say here now. The answer will be valuable to me. I have 200 of the world's greatest innovators in the room right now. Whatever you say, carry on or leave it and work on something else will be useful to do. So those of you with books, please hold them high. Please hold them high. 3, 2, 1. Continue to develop the technology. Scrap it and work on something else. Okay. Okay. All right. Interesting. Interesting. Well, thank you very much. That is one of the most valuable things you could have told me. How many zombie projects are there existing in organizations that we should just kill and work on something else? Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not often that you have to apologize to 200 of your industry peers. You've just participated in a simulation. This tech doesn't exist, as some of you may have realized. We call this kind of interaction test a Wizard of Oz test, and the intent is to try and create a simulation that is realistic enough that you can elicit genuine responses from people in order to make decisions. The big difference is that actually you're not spending tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds on creating the prototypes to elicit that response. So actually, the kit is very, very simple. It's a bunch of books with a bunch of RFID stickers, which for the avoidance of doubt do nothing. Please don't throw away your precious conference notes. We won't be tracking you for time eternal. I should show you that actually this doesn't have a plug on it, and there is just a battery in here with a hollow tube. A couple of days of time in the workshop. The critical thing is that this is our minimum viable product. This is our minimum viable test bed. Hopefully all we needed to create an illusion that brought a lot of you along with us on the journey. And the thing you're really going to be angry with me about is the fact that this thing, this is me looking across you guys, seeing how many books are shaking and adjusting this thing like that. Sorry, half a day of Python script. The point is that it took less than a man-week to create this MVP product here. We haven't spent tens of thousands of dollars, and you guys told me that we shouldn't carry on with this. I don't know whether that's a true thing or not. It kind of doesn't matter, and maybe we should have made sure everyone had their books. But I think you get the point. So the final question, let's just see what you guys say. Wow, okay, nightmare. Gin and tonic it is. The final one, of course, is failing to learn and iterate quickly and cost effectively. How many times do we find ourselves polishing that thing, polishing and polishing, getting it higher and higher resolution, only to find it's failed? So the final evil is, please focus on what the MVP is, focus on the minimum you need to do to move your learning journey forward, that little piece, and please do it cost effectively where you can. So 10 design evils, the opportunity for FEI redemption. Thank you very much for listening. I've talked way too long, but thank you, and please don't be evil.